We welcome in Jeff Paterson, the host of Rinkwide Vancouver. They'll be back at it Saturday after the game against San Jose. And, of course, our Canucks reporter who's out at UBC for Canucks practice. Jeff, how we doing?
Good. And a little bit of news right off the top. Got my eyes on Thatcher Demko on the ice this morning here at UBC. We're led to believe he's been skating regularly at Rogers Arena. Of course, they control that building and the access to it, not the same here on the campus of UBC. So when I arrived, Thatcher and Marco Terenius were just wrapping up whatever drills they had done. So I didn't really get a great look at him. But really, I think it's the first time for me with my own eyes seeing Thatcher on a sheet of ice since training camp in Penticton. We know he's been out on the road. Saw some video from Chicago. But I can confirm that Thatcher Demko in pads here at UBC this morning.
Jeff, Talker was asked about him this week and gave a very similar answer to what he gave last month when we were still in the preseason phase of things. Do you think Thatcher, because obviously Thatcher had a great desire to be the communicator about all of this in training camp, do you see Thatcher updating us at any point, or do you think it's just going to be he's ready to go, Thatcher Demko's your starting goaltender, and here he is?
I think the first time we see him at a practice of any kind with the group, even if it's in a goalies generally don't wear non-contact, but that'll be to me the next step in this progression. I'm not anticipating that we're going to hear from Thatcher. I know he tried to get out in front of it in Penticton, but I can't envision a scenario where he feels the need to update. If there is any sort of update at this stage, it really just feels like a holding pattern to the point that you mentioned, Matt. When Rick Tocchet says 4 good days in a row, great. I guess that beats the alternative. But what does that mean at this stage? Really, 4 good days. We don't know sort of where the barometer is, what the baseline is at this point. The fact that he's on the ice indicates that he is still trying to chip away and work through things. But none of us seems to know where he is in the recovery process. So when I see timelines, and they're all guesses, that's all they can be at this stage. And I guess I'm sort of defaulting now to I'll believe it when I see it. And that's not that I don't doubt that Thatcher Demko is making every effort to return, but I'm just not sure how much it furthers the story to suggest that he's 2 weeks away or 3 weeks away. He needs to practice. Like, if he's going to get back in the National Hockey League net, he's got to be with his teammates on the ice at practice. That will be the next real indication, I think, of some progress in this story.
100% agree. It's a good sign that he's not going backwards. I think if he was going backwards, if there was a setback, I think that we wouldn't see him. So it's great that he's not going backwards, but until he's demonstrably going forwards, then I'm just going to assume it's kind of status quo to some degree. While we're with goaltending, let's just stay there. I mean, when's the next time we see Artur Shilovs in a game?
I wonder if we see him on Tuesday in Anaheim. And if so, is that some sort of last stand for him in this run of NHL games? If that's the way it played out, if I imagine Lankinen plays Saturday in San Jose, if they decide to go back to Shilovs, to give him an opportunity so that he's not sitting for as long as he did the last time, but also if you sort of reverse engineer it, I would think you'd want Lankinen to play the Kings on the back end of the road trip, the Oilers, even without McDavid, on Saturday. I could see a way where they split these first 2 games against the weaker California teams, and then that would allow Lankinen to really get on some sort of run of 5 or 6 in a row. If it doesn't go well for Shilovs, does he have to go back to Abbotsford? Is it as simple as that? And I wondered if that was something they kicked around after the other night against New Jersey. He didn't look good, didn't get much help in front of him. But guys, 2 home ice appearances this year, and he's been shelled for 6 in both of them. He's got a save percentage at the NHL level that starts with a 7 right now. That's not getting it done. So they have the option of sending him back to Abbotsford uncontested with no waiver eligibility issues. I wonder if there's another tough start or even an average start for Artur Shilovs. If you know you're going to run Lankinen for a bunch of games, who cares? You could get a clown from Halloween to sit on the end of the bench to be the backup. And clowns aren't needed because Halloween's gone. So there might be a bunch of them around. Who knows? Pick your costume. The point is that if it's Yuri Patera and you know that he's not going to play, he can serve as the backup. He's done that in the National Hockey League. So I do think that they're going to have some decisions to make, but it's Lankinen on Saturday for sure. And where they go from there, I guess we'll have to see.
All I know is when I used to go to the door, I was looking for a firm handshake and some life advice as opposed to a treat. Did you see his tweet
last night? I did not.
Did we misjudge that one? We understocked the supply. We were done. Our candy supply was out and over before 8 o'clock. And so, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, so I joked that at that point, all I could do was offer a firm handshake and some life advice to the young kids. Continued to turn the light off, and they still continued.
And they still came.
Oh, yeah.
We were the opposite. It was not very busy for us. The rain dampened spirits.
We did it perfectly.
Yeah.
We had 4 candies left when the last group came. They each got one, and that was that.
There you go. Let's ask you the poll question as the Canucks sputter a little bit here.
Which, by the way, is running like dead heat 50-50.
We're on a roll here with our poll questions. To a degree, it's measuring panic here, Jeff. But would you overpay right now for a top 4 defenseman if you're the Vancouver Canucks? One might say they did that with Nikita Zadorov, but they kind of got what you're supposed to get out of those kinds of trades. And depending on who the target is, you might get more than 1 year out of that player, a la Rasmus Andersson, who I think I'm ready to overpay for, Jeff. But how about you?
Yeah, a couple of ways to come at that one. One is, have you seen what's going on with Zadorov in Boston? He was the low ice time guy on defense. They got absolutely pumped by Carolina last night. And, we've seen this before in the National Hockey League, but his timing was perfect. He had a great playoff run that set him up to go into unrestricted free agency, and he cashed in. But he's looking more like a depth defenseman right now in the early going in Boston, and maybe he'll find his form, and maybe they'll find their form. But, boy, the Bruins are scuffling along. Enough about them. On Rasmus Andersson, interesting player, obviously. A lot of chatter around him. He's not a pending UFA. He's still got a year left on his contract. So it's not like Calgary has to move him. And ultimately, we'll sort of see how things play out. Flames have kind of come back down to earth now, haven't they, after a nice start to their season. So we'll see what kind of mood Craig Conroy is in. How many trades can the Canucks pull off with Calgary Flames? I guess it's quite honestly, you talk about rivalries. Sure, it helps you in the short term, but just stockpiling the Calgary Flames, there's Zadorov, Kuzmenko, and now we're talking about what would certainly be a sizable parcel of assets to get Rasmus Andersson. He's a really good defenseman, a 50-point guy, can bring offense, but defends well as well. He's an interesting character, and I can understand why there is some interest. And it wouldn't just be the Canucks, it would be around the National Hockey League. So what's the asking price? And when you say overpay, I think you're already paying a chunk to get a player like that. So what sort of assets do the Canucks have to part with? We're talking about a first rounder, Aramaki, we've got Willander. It's those same names. Are they willing to really cut off the long-term sort of growth of this organization for the here and now? But at the same time, guys, you can't move forward with what we saw on Wednesday night at Rogers Arena defensively. When Quinn and Filip Hronek aren't on the ice, and even if they play 30 minutes, and that's a stretch, there's still 30 minutes of hockey to be played, and we know that they're getting absolutely torched in those minutes. Expected so much more from Carson Soucy. He and Tyler Myers, it's been a disastrous start. And then you've got this grab bag of sort of the other 4 trying to figure out what is your optimal 6 on defense. So, yeah, there's a lot of work to be done. We know it was the month of November that Alvin started cooking last year with the late November trade for Zadorov. So maybe we're just entering into that window right now where this management group is sort of rubbing its hands together, trying to figure out, what kind of deal can they ultimately pull off here.
The good news about Carson Soucy struggling here is, guys, here's the silver lining for you. Now you're agnostic on right-handed or left-handed shot defensemen that you need to acquire. Which doesn't matter.
Which feeds into my next question because, outside of Andersson, and again, people saying Andersson not available right now, at least not immediately.
But overpaying would change that, I think. If you call up a team that is even saying, we're going to hold off right now. If you sweeten the pot enough,
I think Calgary wants to keep hope alive here. I think they know they can make a great deal for Rasmus Andersson at any point during this season or even in the offseason if they want to hold on to him. But when we're talking about top 4 defensemen available at the moment, I think we're talking about Ivan Provorov in Columbus and Cam Fowler in Anaheim. Do either, and they're both lefties, although Provorov has played on the right side. Do either of those names fancy? Do you fancy either of those names, Jeff?
I think I would look more at Provorov than Fowler. I don't have the ages in front of me, but Fowler's got to be considerably older than Provorov.
32. And with term Fowler, Provorov is expiring and cheaper.
Yeah, I think I'd be likely to take a pass on Cam Fowler at this stage, but I think Provorov, I'd have to explore it a little bit further, but certainly you get the feeling that Columbus, at some point that organization's got to get a little traction, but they've tried so many things and it just hasn't happened. So maybe they'd be willing to explore options in that regard. When you throw those names at me, just off the top of my head, I think Provorov probably more intriguing to me than Fowler.
They poo-pooed a possibility of a trade right now too. For they're playing the same role as Calgary is with Anderson.
It's early. It is, and you're right. You do have to sell hope. If you can't sell wins, you do have to sell some degree of hope. Obviously, hope in short supply this year in Columbus, just given the Johnny Gaudreau situation that's sort of hovering over that whole organization. I don't think they can afford to pack it in November. And I think that's part of why, Zadorov, he wanted out of Calgary last year, but we weren't seeing a lot of trades out. Remember last year, the story was Patrick Relvine's the only GM that's
making trades.
Pull off these trades. Well, it takes two sides, obviously, to get a deal done. So I do think it's a little premature. Look, the Canucks haven't even played 10 games. They'll hit that mark tomorrow night in San Jose. So probably a touch early, but never too early to at least start looking around and exploring some of the options that are out there.
Yeah. The thing is, the moment Calgary trades Rasmus Andersson, they tell their fan base, folks,
we're kind of done.
Hunker in. It's going to be a long time until the new building and our new competitiveness. The thing about Provorov and Fowler that we should probably point out, Provorov with 3 assists in 9 games, no goals. Fowler with 2 in 10 games. They off the slow starts, so maybe that affects the price a little bit.
At this stage, though, if you're the Canucks, you're not too worried about the offense that those guys are bringing.
No, you're not.
Solidify that defense core.
Can you defend? Can you play half the ice, Cam, Yvonne, and help us in that regard? Hey. We're looking at this schedule in November. Our friends at the Daily Hive even put together, this sets up well, this November schedule. And I'm even guilty of saying should be a sitter on Saturday night. Sharks have won 3 in a row, Jeff. Are you laying 9 goals with the Canucks tomorrow?
It's funny because I saw a tweet this morning that said the Sharks have the longest active win streak among Western Conference teams in the here and now. And you're right, it is only 3. But look, at the start of the week, they didn't have a victory at all. So nice comeback the other night against Utah. They followed it up with a good win over Los Angeles, and then Chicago. That's a pick 'em. Once the candy was given out, I turned that one on against my better judgment, watching San Jose and Chicago on any night. But it's Bedard. I wanted to see. Did you see the attendance, guys? 10,300 at the Shark Tank last night. That's going to be a storyline to monitor. And obviously, Macklin Celebrini wasn't playing last night. He'll sell some tickets, but.
He could be back tomorrow, Jeff. He has been skating in practice, so we might see the Wonder King from Vancouver.
When you look at the schedule, the sad sack Sharks, and it was around this time last year, the Canucks beat them 10-1. All of a sudden, when you're coming off a 6-0 shutout loss yourself, you better not be taking anybody lightly. And, my first time joining you guys since the other night, and as hard as I've tried to scrub it from my memory bank, I can't. It was awful. It really was. And yet you could see some signs of it coming with the way that they had played, not even the Carolina game, outside of the 65 seconds against Pittsburgh, there were some warning signs there. And then you track it back. Chicago, they gave up a ton of chances. And even in the shutout loss or the shutout win in Philadelphia, Lankinen had to be terrific. He made a bunch of really good saves that night. So it had sort of been trending in the wrong direction a little longer than the Canucks wanted. I didn't see a 6-0 loss coming, but hey, give the Devils credit. Started early and the scoring continued often throughout the night. So, let's see what the Canucks do for a response there. They got to be looking internally more than they can be thinking about the San Jose Sharks. But all of a sudden, the Sharks might be able to put up more resistance than we would have thought a week ago.
Well, Canucks have this embedded excuse of Thatcher Demko, but the entirety of this November schedule, there's not many juggernaut teams, and even teams that you would normally call juggernauts like the New York Rangers are not playing to the utmost of their abilities right now. They're doing fine, I guess, at 6-2-1, but they're in a tough division. But everybody else is at the bottom of the division. You get to see the Penguins again, the Islanders in this month. If they can't get through this month, Jeff, unscathed, and never mind unscathed, but actually with some traction, I think Canuck management has to have some serious concerns because the schedule is being kind to them for the entirety of this month of November.
Sure, and 2 more weeks before their first back-to-back, and even when they do have a back-to-back, speaking of backs, that would look like Dan Murphy in my rear-view mirror. So when we talk about goaltending decisions, no back-to-backs there, they can run Kevin Lankinen for a while without worrying too much about fatigue. You're right, after 3 in California, and the games were all spaced out there, then they come back home. We talked about that Oilers game. But look, guys, this was a team that was dominant on home ice last year, 27 wins. They have 1 win in 5 games at Rogers Arena right now. So this idea that, just because they're coming off a road trip and they're going to be at home, chance to make hay, sure, on one hand, but ultimately you've got to make that hay, and they just haven't been able to do that at all. They've got to get Petey going, we know that, but the Jake DeBrusk story, if he doesn't score in San Jose, 10 off the hop as a Canuck without a goal, and it's not even the goals. For him, it's the process, and he just hasn't looked dangerous. His shot totals are way down compared to what I expected. This is a guy that started with Elias Paterson. That lasted 2 games. He's been taken off the top unit power play. Not a whole lot happening for the high-priced newcomer to the Vancouver Canucks. So as much as the heat is on the $12 million guy that's making $5.5, they need to get him going. And without those two pulling the rope, it is going to be difficult for this team to get some traction here in the month of November.
Yeah. We kicked this around yesterday, Jeff. Interested in your 2 cents because we saw, and he doesn't go to this card often, but we saw some mixing and matching with the defense pairs as the onslaught was happening against Jersey on Wednesday. Is there a world to split Hughes and Hronek now and at least have one very capable guy across 2 pairs and a little bit more balance until you right the ship with the rest of that bottom 4
You'd
defense?
have a puck mover in each pairing then, Hughes, Hronek, Brandstrom as well, theoretically.
Yeah, I think I'm ready to see it. And I think you got a sense the other night that they realized that what was happening in real time wasn't getting it done. And so they had no recourse but to sort of make those changes. So some of it was the fact that the game was getting away from them. They had a little bit of time to experiment. So I'll be curious to see how they line up in San Jose. Does Derek Forbort get back in there? Has only played the 3 games before the personal leave, but it kind of feels like maybe you get him back in the lineup. Does Brandstrom then move to the right side? So, there were some quite a few moving parts here. But, yeah, as good as Quinn and Philip Hronek have been, and the underlying numbers are terrific, and I think they've outscored opponents 7-2 at 5-on-5. So they've given up 2 5-on-5 goals. When you think how many goals as a team the Canucks have given up, that Hughes-Hronek pair has done exactly what you expect. In saying all of that, guys, it's interesting, and Irf and I talked a little bit about this on Rink Wide the other night too. Okay, red-hot spotlight on Elias Paterson. I just mentioned Jake DeBrusk and those issues. Philip Hronek, what are the expectations on a guy making $7.25 million now? He can't just be Quinn Hughes' caddy. You're paying him too much. He has 2 assists in 9 games. That was sort of the production level we saw down the stretch. This is a guy that ultimately had 48 points last year, but so much of that was the early season production that sort of faded away. So what is Philip Hronek? I think there's still some exploration to come up with a true answer to that question. So maybe it is time to see if he can hold his own and anchor a pairing there, because ultimately, with what they're getting out of him, yes, territorially, statistically, he and Quinn are in a groove. But could you not have found a $3 or a $4 million guy to essentially play that role for Quinn Hughes? If you're paying Philip Hronek $7.25, as they are, and they committed to him long term, I think there has to be, again, this idea of raising the bar a little bit in terms of expectations on individual players.
Wholeheartedly agree.
Just do me a favor, J-Pat. Don't ask him if he's injured. Let somebody else do that. It's probably best.
We'll give that one a little time. Problem is, I think he's completely healthy this time around. Last time I had my suspicions. This time I believe he's completely healthy. And they just need more. And it might start hit the net. He's got the big shot, but boy, it's wild. So yeah.
Did I see that he dressed up as Batman for Halloween?
Oh, really?
Did you see that?
No,
I did not. I saw a few photos, but I didn't see Hronek.
Okay. Well, yeah. Philip, time to be Batman. No more Robin.
Oh, I like it. Yeah, very good.
Until Monday, Jeff, have a great show Saturday post-game. rink wide after the affair in the Shark Tank, which may draw 10,000 people.
Yeah, we'll see about the attendance number. I know that there'll be 2 in studio. Patrick Johnson sitting in for Irf, so it'll be me and PJ on Saturday night. You guys have a great weekend as well. We'll catch up on Monday.